Explosive devices found in the Lubuski region confirm that Russian-sponsored sabotage operations continue to threaten Polish national security.
Według ocen
According to assessments by the Institute for the Study of War, what Russia is doing today is phase zero, i.e. the last phase before aggression against Poland and other NATO countries. The problem is that the services supervised by Poland's current authorities are not particularly good at dealing with such incidents. This is clearly illustrated by the case of sabotage carried out by Russian services on Polish railways 2 weeks ago.
Te zaniedbania, ta indolencja.
This negligence and incompetence has visible consequences. Consequences like Russian saboteurs being able to enter Polish territory unnoticed, damage the railway tracks, and then leave Polish territory completely undisturbed. And this is despite the fact that information about one of the perpetrators responsible for the sabotage of the Polish railway line was available on the internet, as he had also been responsible for an earlier act of sabotage in Ukraine, and had even been convicted in absentia by a Ukrainian court.
ta osoba absolutnie nie powinna wiedzieć.
This person should absolutely not have been allowed to enter Poland. Maybe, if the Polish side so wished, a special operation could have been carried out to use him to our advantage. What actually happened is absolutely scandalous.
Albo mamy do czynienia z działaniem.
Either we are dealing with a deliberate plot, or we are dealing with the incompetence of those in power. As I myself am a civil servant, I would like to believe that government services are not controlled by outside forces. The prosecutor's office has finally managed to issue arrest warrants for saboteurs working on behalf of Russian military intelligence.
2 tygodnie na to, żeby wysłać.
Too weak to send out a warrant for people who entered Poland from Donbass through Russia and Belarus, without noticing that one of these people had been convicted for acts of sabotage in Ukraine.
W zasadzie już można.
In fact, it seems like this is not a coincidence, but a systematic destruction of all instruments guaranteeing the security of the Polish state. Those currently at the head of government services that are supposed to protect the state are people who, during Donald Tusk's first term in office from 2007 to 2014, pursued a policy of diplomatic rapprochement with Russia.
Na czele tych służb Donald Tusk z Kosiniakiem-Kamyszem.
When choosing the heads of these services, Donald Tusk and his defense minister put people who were politically involved in the diplomatic reset with the Russian Federation, and now they are supposed to deal with military counterintelligence against the Russian Federation, prosecute Russian spies, and take action to protect the Polish state. For example, today's deputy head of the Internal Security Agency, Krzysztof Dusza, during Tusk's first term as prime minister, he was one of the architects of the agreement between Polish military counterintelligence and the Russian Federal Security Service, which Donald Tusk ultimately signed. The question is, to what extent this influences the current service's operations?
Służby specjalne mają inne priorytety, wykonują różnego rodzaju.
Unfortunately, during Donald Tusk's rule, the special services have other priorities. They carry out various political orders at the request of the Polish prime minister, and in doing so, they neglect their priority tasks, the tasks for which these services were established, namely, ensuring counterintelligence security for the Polish army.
Obecna ekipa postawiła kwestię
The current government has put the destruction of their political opposition as their first priority, and this is the main task of the services, not national security, which means that the services, which are poorly funded and paralyzed by fear, do not take certain actions, even though they have the tools to do so. It seems that, under Donald Tusk's government, the priority for secret services is to destroy the political opposition, at any cost, even national security. Out here, peace seems like a distant prospect. Peace? I don't believe that peace will prevail anytime soon. With a neighbor like that, I doubt it will happen. It's getting worse. Every day it gets worse. According to many Ukrainians, the Kremlin's actions are nothing more than an attempt to force Ukraine to agree to whatever terms are put on the table, so long as the hell of war ends. This is intimidation on the part of Russia. The attacks are aimed at the civilian population so that Kyiv and the government will make a quicker decision to sign the agreement. That's my opinion. They are simply targeting the civilian population so that we will accept the agreement. But the Ukrainian government is trying to control what will be included in the agreement. After the first round of talks in Geneva, a delegation is flying to the United States to discuss the most difficult points of the peace proposal with the Americans. Firstly, they will discuss surrendering the entire Donbass region, including the part still defended by Ukrainian soldiers. Secondly, they will discuss completely blocking Ukraine's accession to NATO. And finally, they will discuss the prospect of reducing the size of the Ukrainian army. The war with Russia continues, and we all hear that Russia despises the efforts of key world powers to actually end it with lasting peace. However, Whether peace prevails does not depend on Russia's threats or ultimatums. It depends on the conditions that the world will ensure so that this aggression cannot continue. At the same time, the Ukrainian president himself has just announced systemic changes in the country's defense. They are to concern investments in various areas. First and foremost, drones, and the creation of a death zone along the entire front line. In the last year of the war, drones have become a fundamental and key element of both Ukrainian defense and Russian aggression. They have completely changed the battlefield, where today, any massive concentration of forces is a liability, affecting the impact of large numbers of soldiers. Operators see and know everything. And today, they don't even have to track their targets, as artificial intelligence is increasingly involved in the war. The processor on board the drone takes control and, following the signal from the camera, tracks the point to be hit. As a pilot, I select and set it. AI maintains the drone and guides it to the target. That means that if I lose connection with the drone, image suppression and control no longer matter, because the drone will fly to that point completely on its own. This forces changes on both sides of the front line. It is also an alarm signal for the whole world. Even if peace negotiations result in a ceasefire, the lessons learned from this war, especially in the use of drones and modern technology, will not disappear. This war will not end only on the Dnieper River. The drones and artificial intelligence that rule the front lines today will determine the victories and defeats of every army in the world tomorrow. The history of the Church is being written by the Pope before our very eyes. Pope Leo XIV and the honorary leader of the Orthodox Church, Patriarch Bartholomew I of Constantinople, confirmed in Istanbul their desire to bring the churches closer together, including agreeing on a common date for Easter.
By remembering
this significant event and inspired by Jesus' prayer that all his disciples may be one, we are encouraged in our efforts to restore full unity among all Christians, a task we undertake with God's help.
to seek the restoration of full communion among all Christians.
This is another day of the Pope's extremely intense journey to Turkey, a country that is a crossroads of cultures and religions. Today, Leo XIV also quietly visited the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, which is an expression of respect for Turkey, but also of interreligious dialogue. Yesterday, during his visit to Iznik, the ancient city of Nicaea, on the occasion of the 1700th anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council, he appealed, among other things, for opposition to religious fundamentalism.
We must strongly reject the use of religion for justifying war, violence, or any form of fundamentalism or fanaticism. Instead, the paths to follow are those of fraternal encounter, dialogue, and cooperation.
Tomorrow, Pope Leo XIV will begin the next stage of his pilgrimage. He will fly to the Middle East, to Lebanon.
In the Christian community in Lebanon, we are predominantly conservative people with values for the family, with attachment to Jesus, Mary, Saint Charbel, and John Paul II. Here, I may say that any pope's visit to Lebanon.
However, Lebanon has been struggling with numerous crises for years, including war and extreme poverty among refugees from Syria. Pope Leo is visiting Lebanon, but why? Here is the answer. We are 15 kilometers from the Syrian border and 60 kilometers from Damascus. Here live children who know no other world than the refugee camp. Even the leader of the terrorist group Hezbollah, who is trying to maintain his influence in the still troubled Lebanon, expressed his satisfaction with the Pope's pilgrimage. We welcome his visit at this critical moment with joy. Many pilgrims from Poland will also take part in Leo XIV's three-day visit to Lebanon, which is already being called historic. There is a truly holy euphoria. The road from the airport to the city center makes the biggest impression on all tourists and pilgrims. Once dominated by posters of Hezbollah leaders, especially Hassan Nasrallah, today they have been replaced by Pope Leo. John Paul II visited Lebanon in May 1997 and was greeted enthusiastically by hundreds of thousands of Lebanese. His visit is still considered one of the most important events in the country's history. Hong Kong police have announced that the death toll from the massive fire in the high-rise complex may rise significantly. In addition to the 128 confirmed deaths, approximately 150 people are still missing. Firefighters are still searching the remaining high-rise buildings. 14 people have already been arrested in connection with the fire. The fire broke out on Wednesday afternoon and quickly spread to 7 of the complex's 8 32-story buildings, which were wrapped in bamboo scaffolding, green netting, and covered with insulation foam for renovation purposes. The authorities emphasize that rescuers have not yet found all the residents. The rescue operation ended yesterday, but the search of the buildings is still ongoing.
Today, we got 128 deceased persons confirmed case. We expected that when our DVIU officers entered other buildings, the number of death toll may be on the rise.
The apartments, built in 1983, were part of a public housing program for the poor in one of the most expensive places in the world. I am a positive and carefree person. I lived happily. Now I don't feel like doing anything. I am devastated. I expect the worst. If they were still alive, they would have replied or called the police or emergency services. The estate consists of 8 high-rise buildings and almost 2,000 apartments. Almost 4,500 people lived there. I've lived here for over 40 years. Everything I had in my home burned down. I lost everything. I spent everything on this apartment and furniture and appliances. I have nothing. I hope the government will help us. Over a third of the residents of the Wang Fu Court complex were over 65 years old. Only thanks to sedatives can I sleep for 2 or 3 hours. When we think about the home we lost, about that dark place. But I feel relieved to see my family. I'm happy to see many neighbors who are here. I don't want to think about other things. The investigation into the fire is ongoing. Authorities have already detained 14 people connected to the company responsible for renovation work in the neighborhood. Among those temporarily arrested are engineering consultants, people responsible for scaffolding installation, and one broker. It is already known that the fire alarm systems were not working properly. Investigators are looking into possible corruption and the use of hazardous materials during the renovation. Hong Kong is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. Approximately 300,000 people live in the Tai Po district, where the fire broke out.